Hi, Stephen.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Can you say your last name for me so I don't pronounce
Shin
it
Shinsky.
Shinsky? That's what I thought it wasn't like I better ask before I pronounce it and then it's something I do horribly wrong. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing is I'll introduce you and then I'm just going to ask you a series of questions and then that'll be it. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to start now. So, hello. Today we're welcoming Stephen Shinsky, class of 2015. He's going to share with us a little bit about his career development and how he got to where he was today. So, Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Stephen, and I am a 2015 graduate of the College of Graduate Studies, where I majored in biochemistry and molecular biology. So I did my doctoral work. I was mentored by Dr. Michael Cosgrove. Um, I live in northern New Jersey now. I'm married to my husband, Sunil, and I work as a senior medical director with a pharmaceutical marketing and advertising agency that specializes in oncology drugs.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. So, tell us a little bit about your time here at the graduate college program. Did you take any career development classes, workshops, anything like that that you found helpful throughout your time here?
I have to admit, I was probably someone who underutilized the resources that were available at the time. What I remember when I joined SUNY Upstate in 2011, I think it was at that time there was a concerted effort to help PhD students explore alternative careers outside of academia, which I think was sort of a common theme across, all of academia starting around 2010 or so, because it became very clear that, only a very small proportion of us were going to go on to, faculty positions. And so as I said, I certainly probably underutilized the resources, but there were certain things that were happening all around um, on campus that when it came time to transitioning out of academia, I certainly had that foundation that I needed.
That's great. So, when you were ready to pursue a career, what were some things that you did before you graduated?
So before I graduated from upstate, I was pretty set on staying in academia for a while. So, I was really well positioned to have my choice of several different postdoctoral positions, which was really wonderful because, I had a lot of really great training at upstate. And so it was really nice to sort of have the pick of labs that I wanted to go to next. So that was great. But then when I really started to transition out of academia, I really just pulled on all the training I had up until that time in terms of, learning how to describe what I was able to do to potential employers that is beyond, pipetting at a lab bench.
Great. That's great. So, what recommendations would you give to graduates coming out of school?
Well, I think probably the last thing I said is the first thing I'll say, which is being able to translate all the different things that you've learned, in your graduate studies into how those skills are useful for potential employers. And so, certainly unless you're going for a research job at another bench where those skills that you have with bench research are directly applicable, you really need to spend some time thinking about what are those other skills that you have acquired that will be beneficial. And so for me, I certainly learned how to be a really strong critical and analytical thinker, how to be a problem solver when things don't go right in the lab. And probably the skill that I use most of the time in my current position is just being able to find information, being a smart Googler, and being able to read scientific and clinical literature and quickly sort through what's important, what's not important to the projects that me and my team are working on. And so that's a big selling point. for potential employers.
That's great. Thank you. You brought up some really good points, which I was going to ask you about next was the soft skills, which you brought up, communication, research, thinking critically. I think all those things are so important. And I think sometimes we get sidetracked from those. I think we think about just the main things that we do in the job, but I appreciate you talking about the importance of those things because I do think not only do we have to work on our educational part, but we also have to work on the other skills that employers are looking for. So tell us a little bit about your current position. And if you had any students or if there are any students who would be interested in a position like you're doing, what would you recommend for them?
Yeah, sure. So as I said at the beginning, I'm a senior medical director with a pharmaceutical marketing and advertising agency that's based in New York City. And this particular agency specializes in sort of strategic marketing for oncology drugs, which is really great because I was sort of engaged in cancer research when I was at Upstate and in my postdoctoral studies, and it's always been really interesting to me. And so my role as a senior medical director is really to be the disease and treatment landscape expert on across the accounts that I work on, which is really great because that's what I'm trained to do, is really be an expert in a very specific topic. And so then my role is sort of part strategic, leading the medical and scientific strategy for a certain drug, but also being sort of a reviewer, because we certainly have the more creative types that are a lot more creative and out there than I am. And it's my job to make sure that everything stays grounded in the science and in the medicine and isn't just saying things that, wouldn't fly by regulatory bodies like the FDA. So, and I enjoy all of that.
That's great.
Oh, and your second question was, what advice would I have? There's a lot of avenues into the broader field of medical communications and medical advertising, marketing. A lot of people start off as medical writers and work their way up to medical director positions. In the advertising space, people can actually sort of start out right as junior medical directors, where it's not really medical writing, but sort of doing what I am doing, but sort of under supervision for someone more senior. And so it's really about, my best advice would be, practice reading and understanding clinical data as much as scientific data that we might be more used to. And, really think about those soft transferable skills that you have that, and really be interested in doing that, be interested in, getting away from the bench and doing something different, is really appealing to those companies.
And I like that very much. And I think you're providing with them with different opportunities. And I think sometimes students get so focused on there's only one opportunity, but there's so many things that are out there that they could go in so many different directions. So it's so interesting for me when I'm interviewing all these alums to find all the different career paths that you all have taken and all the different things that you're doing. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And if you had to give one last recommendation or piece of advice to our students, what would it be?
Don't get discouraged. I landed in my career, which I really, really like, by accidentally falling kind of into it. I started kind of down this path and ended up where I am, and things work out in the end.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us today. And I appreciate all your help with this. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.